This is the Extensionists, Conversations with Great Thinkers in Agriculture. I'm Toban Dyck.
And I'm Jay Whetter. Hey, Toban.
Hey, Jay.
We were both at a conference recently,
We were.
Canadian Crops Convention in Edmonton, and we had this really fun...
Is it called Canadian Crops Convention, or is it
I
just
hope so.
Crops Convention? I sure hope so.
So it was in Edmonton, and we had this fun party kind of night at this place called The Banquet, which is right near the Edmonton Oilers Arena.
We had the banquet at the banquet.
Yeah. And you were doing your own thing, and I was doing my own thing. We weren't like at the hip or anything, which is good. That's the way we like to work a room.
It's very strategic.
So I was bowling, and boy, did I suck. But you were doing some punching.
Yeah. So there's like this speed bag thing. You pay $1, and this speed bag like thing comes out, and you punch it, and it gives you a numeric value on. I don't know if it's like weight or whatever, but like you punch it, and you try to beat person you're playing with, or the game's high score, which was nine something, right? 960 or something. I don't know, whatever.
6.
So a whole bunch of us are punching this thing. And I don't want to name. We're not going to name names. Okay. No.
You're not going to name my name?
Well, yeah, your name, yes, but the people I was with.
No, okay. And what were you? Was it your idea to do this punching thing?
No, it wasn't my idea. It was someone else in the canola industry, we'll say, who wanted to do it, and she was giving us advice on how to do it. So like hip rotation, like leading into this thing. Whatever. It's kind of getting on in the evening. So yeah, we're having some fun. Hip rotation, follow through and stuff. So a lot of us were really overthinking this thing. And then if you whiff on it, if you don't get it like a solid punch, then you got one shot, and it kind of sucks. And it's like really, but what's also interesting is like you're with all these colleagues, right? So it's like there's a bit of like you want to show off a little bit, like you want to have a high number, and you're like, it's hard, there's a lot of pressure on it. You feel like there's like a power struggle.
And how did you do?
I did okay. So I got the highest of that bunch,
then you came and found me at the end of the night.
So then where this story is going, and I don't want to take the spotlight away from Jay, because
we're getting there. I can wait. I'm good. I'm
getting there. So end of the evening, Jay and I come together, and we talk about how our social strategy played out of us working the room. No, just kidding. We didn't talk about that at all.
You took a video of me dancing.
This is true.
Abby, do not put that anywhere on the air.
Yeah, she might. Anyway, so stay tuned. Tell Jay about this fun activity and talk about some of this. You hear some laughter in the background. It's Abby. I talked to Jay about this game, and he's interested because he's up for anything. And so he walks up to this punching bag. My high score was in the 600s.
No. Was it? But then you got much better
initially.
Later.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so 600. So I'm like, yeah, I sure confidently go to it with Jay. I'm like, Jay's not going to beat my score, blah, 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 whatever. He walks up to it. No visible, at least no pronounced hip rotation like I had, right? Walks up to the thing and punches 840. And I'm like, that's no bueno is what I thought in my head. Yeah, no good. For those of you who need that translation. So I got to give this another go.
Yeah.
With, lots of pressure. So I punch again, 816.
Yeah.
I didn't.
So I elevated your game. I mean, you have to give me that at least, because you were 690 before that. Then.
You did. I really want to travel to Edmonton again with you.
Yeah, and do that all over again, just for that. Well, I think that, I mean, the competitive juices, if we can use that word.
Sure.
It's like the moist of competitiveness.
That's right. Also no bueno.
Yeah, that's right. Do not say that word ever again, Jay. But I think this sets up our conversation with Alison Sunstrum, who is our guest today, because we're going to be talking about how to make Canadian agriculture more competitive. At least that's part of the sub theme. So can we get onto that, or is there
Are
one more
you,
thing you
like
want to say about punching?
punching above our weights? and
Punching
stuff?
above our weight. Yeah,
Isn't that what you were going to say?
Reaching for the cliche of cliches.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great segue. Anyways, it was a fun conference. Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. Absolutely.
On to Alison.
We're doing extension because we value it.
Farmers are still looking for information, even while governments have pulled away from the job of extension. So like you said, the need's there, and there's fewer people actually doing extension, and so we thought we'd jump into that. And we hope that sponsors recognize that this service that we're offering and give us some support.
As much as we are doing that because we see a need and we have a passion for it, we're also doing it because we see a need among some of the groups that could be sponsors, and we see that they are also looking for new ways to extend.
If anybody else wants to step forward, we'd welcome their support as well. Welcome to the Extensionists. We have Alison Sunstrum here, who's a managing partner for NYA Ventures. Alison, you've got a lot of titles, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself with whatever you want to tell us. But first, you have to tell me what NYA Ventures is.
Okay. Well, I typically don't want to say what it is, but it's a title that came out of thinking about my entire team are a bunch of nerds, and although we provide capital, we really love data. And when we first put our thesis together, we were thinking, what kind of founders do we want? And we decided that the kinds we want were diverse. They were just setting up a class of their own, and we said these are the outliers. And in data, and see, now it's going to get nerdy, but in data, not being average is 3 standard deviations away from the mean. And so we said, hey, let's not be average. And so out of that came NYA. But however, I will tell you that's just kind of a glib and flip statement. It also means I spent a great deal of time in Africa, and in one of the tongues, it means purpose. And I would say that that's what our fund is about.
I love that. So
That's
you've got
great.
multiple
That's-
meanings.
Multiple meanings.
I also love the not your average.
Yeah,
that's great.
but so we're 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds in, and we're really nerding out at a deep level.
Yeah.
But you need to explain something to me. I wasn't expecting to go this deep into nerd world
Sure.
right away. But you said something about 3
standard
it wasn't 3
deviation
degrees.
away from the mean. And
Yeah.
what you have is an
Yeah,
outlying
what?
data point. And some people will remove that point. But what I'm really interested in is what
Oh,
does that
yeah.
mean? What does that point represent?
So what do 3 standard deviations?
Okay,
from
we
the
just
mean
got way too
mean?
deep. Let's go to sailing.
Yeah,
I want the 1 second or the 1 minute version.
You're soon going to discover you're talking to a couple of idiots. But until that point, let's
All right, let's go.
continue on. Let's go.
Are you not going to answer
No,
my question
no.
about 3 standard
No, because
deviations from the mean?
then-
Okay, so people can figure it out for
Yeah.
themselves.
Yes.
So the key point is that you're interested in those way out here,
Yeah.
like here's the bell curve,
Absolutely.
and there's some sort of three standard deviations, and then you've got these
Okay.
outliers way out here in
So
the fringe.
Jay's not letting it go.
No, I'm not. But so but you're interested in those. You're interested in these outliers, which I think is really cool. So we'll get to
It's
that
very much
eventually,
like
but we can leave that.
We can, but it's very much like society.
Yeah.
We tend to discard those that think amazingly differently, and those that are so far out. And in reality, our problems are so challenging that we need to look for those people that are thinking so differently that we might be able to accomplish our end goals and keep society together using different thoughts.
Well, I am so
That's-
glad I
that's
asked that,
not-
Alison.
That's not uninteresting.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think so. On that note, and again, none of this is in my notes here to talk about, but which is great. So you're chatting with someone at a conference. Like,
Right.
I think we can all picture ourselves in this context, and you're talking to somebody, and they have an interesting idea, and it kind of stands out as a bit out there. So there's that bank of ideas that fits into a category of like you register it as an interesting idea within a certain scope, but then there's ideas that your gut reaction is that's crazy, or like that's so outside of what you're familiar with that you kind of write it off, you pigeonhole it right away. And so I'm curious about that, right? So when you think of ideas that are kind of outside the norm, you think of ideas that are edgy, kind of within a certain scope. But then there's also like that whole, you know, out there bit. And are those the ideas we need to be paying attention to, or you
Oh,
know what I
that's
mean? Yeah,
absolutely it. I can give you two really good examples, one I invested in and one I didn't. And the first one was a spin out from the University of Calgary that had been, let's say, they were creating microbes or growing microbes that were scraping the air to turn into um, natural gas. And, you know, when you first, let me tell you, the scientific terms would
right.
have been much better. But basically taking nothing and turning it into some value product. Well, the natural gas they produced was too expensive. But lo and behold, one of the products or the byproducts, and it's cyanobacteria, one of the byproducts of that process or growing those microbes was actually a product called phycocyanin that is a natural replacement for the color blue. So any pigment for the color blue. So if you're sitting at a conference and a
Mm.
scientist is trying to tell you how they're scrubbing the air with microbes that can then you can then grow a product out of, it's a bit out there. The second one you might understand
It
more,
is.
and that's one I did invest in. The second one is a product that a fellow from Hong Kong brought into the creative destruction lab and said, I have developed a method of packaging that will allow you to keep fresh meat products on the shelf for more than 2 years.
Mm.
So when
Wow.
you come to my house, Jay, and I would
Yeah.
absolutely love to have you and Tobin eat one of those steaks. And it's been sitting on my
Mm.
shelves for a year.
Would you eat one?
Well, I tried it.
Or are we your guinea pigs?
No, I tried it on my kids first, but
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, good
good
yeah.
idea.
plan. Yeah.
But those are the
Okay,
kind of
but
ideas.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah. And does that you said on the shelf? Do you mean in the
No,
fridge
in the
or
in the
like
cupboard.
that is incredible.
Yeah, and what it can do, I will say that that was a very very early stage. He did get his products to a point that that was, if you want to know how the process works, think advanced sous vide. And
Yeah, yeah,
but basically, that enables if you don't have to have a cold chain. Think of the savings.
Yeah.
Think of the different
Oh,
things.
yeah.
So those are the kind of things we're
yeah.
interested in.
Like just yeah, it's very interesting. Like you, there's so many of those
There
ideas
are.
out there. So like, right? And how do you? Yeah,
But
I'm just
you
kind of
give
ruminating on that a little bit because like, how do you sift through that, and how do you?
Yeah. How do you sift through
well,
that? And then more,
yeah.
perhaps more importantly, is how do you bring it to market? And
Right.
that is one of the most challenging factors.
Well, I just before we get to that, Alison, because we want to talk about that because that's you've got some good insight there that will be useful for people. But
You want to just you
yeah,
want to
no, I want to go back to what I had a
Okay.
picture in my mind of a party,
yeah,
and there's this person kind of sitting in the corner
Yeah.
by themselves. No one's talking to them. And I also
yeah.
I have to throw this out there so I don't forget.
That's
I
right.
want a T-shirt that says 3 standard deviations from the mean, and I'm going to wander around with that and see
Actually,
if anybody. Anyway, but so this person standing.
It's like a note to self,
Yeah,
like
that's right. Yeah.
marketing note.
But so Alison,
okay.
in your life, do you go around finding those people standing in the corner by themselves, metaphorically or in actual fact, and because knowing that they probably have something to share that if nobody else has asked them, I'm gonna ask them.
So, first off, I'm married to one, but I think actually we've created a capital market. We've created a accelerator sort of system that doesn't look necessarily for those people. We tend to want to look for people that look exactly like us, behave
Mm-hmm.
exactly like us. And so what we've ended up with a society that looks exactly like us, but there's all these brilliant people running around. I think if you looked at Einstein, he was very much one of these quirky oddballs. Brilliant,
Yeah.
brilliant, brilliant. Never liked to wear shoes. So maybe Jay, go seek out those folks not wearing shoes at a party. I think that's what
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in, is all the diversity of thought and perspective is where we're going to find some solutions to some of the things that we really messed up.
How do we then, as an industry, let's talk about agriculture. But I
Sure.
know that you want to take agriculture out of its, shake it out of its silo, and bring the world to agriculture, or bring agriculture to the world. But how do, within agriculture then, do you have suggestions on how we as an industry can seek out some of these new ideas, completely different oddball ideas? Because I'd love to think in 25 years we're doing something that is completely different.
Can Alison? I want you to answer that question. So please. But can I take a stab at that too?
Yeah, you want to answer?
Well, no, well, just kind of
Yeah, go for it.
observationally, right? You think of that person at a party, and with their kind of wackadoodle ideas, right? And like, especially if they become labeled that way, or if the industry knows that this person as that. You think of the challenges in engaging people like that. They're
Mhm.
and they're nuanced. Like that'd be my take, in the sense, like, you as a person who's going to engage, you have to be comfortable with everybody else in the room seeing you engage with this person, right? So
Yeah.
it becomes almost like a philosophical, it becomes a social,
Yeah.
confidence levels. All these things kind of have to be a part of it, right? Like you had, and it's very. I
Well,
love it.
you've got to be brave enough to seek that person
Yeah,
out and talk to them.
you got to be brave, and you
Mm.
got to, like, there's lots that's going on. You got to be really comfortable in your own skin. You kind of, there's lots of factors in that. So that'd be my take on it, because we've all been there, like, right? There's somebody in the room that you has kind of wild ideas, and you maybe don't sometimes, and you feel a little bit bad, but you don't, for these reasons of these
Mm.
social reasons, all these dynamics that are at play, that are factoring that. And if you think of that, and so this is getting really excited about this. If you think of that over an industry wide, right, and you think of, like, that's what we're leaving at the table,
Yeah.
like, that's what we're leaving behind, for those reasons.
Yeah.
That's quite
Why,
remarkable. Anyway,
Allison?
sorry, Alison.
Why are we not engaging
Jake's
with these
tired of
people?
me talking
Okay,
about it.
so why don't we break this back a little bit and take it into agriculture? And
Yeah.
Sure.
if we'll take it into agriculture first. We have this vision of agriculture in that it is my grandfather driving a tractor. So if you're not on the farm, that's what everyone thinks. And in reality, the average farmer is a pretty sophisticated CEO that needs to manage their cash flow. And I think I even just fell into the trap, and we assume they're men. And so we have this male-based industry, which is at one
Mhm.
time maybe needed to be male-driven because you needed the physicality, but not anymore. And so we have full-on automation happening on farms. We have science at extraordinary levels. And so I think that we have to understand what kind of people our farmers are. And then we also have to understand that there's a lot happening. There's a lot of protein being produced outside our traditional boundaries. So if we could get beyond that, that would be excellent. We also have a series of agricultural schools in Canada, and we think that's the only place that ag lives. But ag lives in the lab, it lives in engineering deeply. And so the science and technical aspect of agriculture is one we have to endorse and adopt. We also have
Mhm.
to make sure that our farmers are the most technologically advanced.
Mm.
Now, if we were speaking on the innovation side, we also have to look at um, the way we look at venture capital today is it's only been around since about the 1990s. And what we developed was a bro culture that is so extraordinary. Women get 2% of VC funds and always have, hasn't improved.
Hmm.
And the average women-led company returns more on a dollar basis than a male-founded company. The bias is very real. I have pounds and
Hmm.
pounds and pounds of research data. Bias is real.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are we, by creating these capital environments, are we creating restrictive thought as well as restrictive access?
Mm.
The other part of that that is really concerning to me is that if you're an entrepreneur of color, you get less.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in agriculture, you also get less. So women
Mm.
with women-led companies in agriculture get about 0.7% of, so less than 1% of funding.
Hmm.
What do we do about
It's a
that?
good
Yeah.
question, because if you take a look at enrollment at the U of C vet school, it's predominantly women.
Vet
Yeah,
school,
yeah,
veterinarians. Is that what
yeah,
you said?
yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Predominantly women.
predominantly
Okay.
women. So interesting culture we have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested in
So,
like
so
how to change that.
right.
How to change that?
So
Two
you
two,
don't.
two middle-aged white guys
Yeah.
in a podcast trying to.
Okay,
Yeah. Right.
well, let's look at what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
We've
I want.
started a war against consonants. We've decided that DEI should go. Those are amazing
Mm-hmm.
words: diversity, equity, inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
We've decided that they can't be funded anymore. We've also got a T word, and I had great amusement at listening to a discussion about transgender mice. And in
Hmm.
reality, it's transgenic mice, but hey,
Oh
when
yeah.
ignorance comes from the
Yeah.
top, I'd be very scared. And the
Yeah.
second T word that I'm also just so frustrated by is tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
May have made us all as Canadians stand up, but oh my goodness, this is counterproductive. We're taxing ourselves, how smart we are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So underlying what you're saying just now is that the bad scenario, the 0.7%, might not get better anytime soon, given that we seem to be going backwards in some of
Well,
this.
I think it's going to get better. I'm very optimistic. I
Okay.
mean, there's
Yeah. That's
there's
good.
there's diversity and equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion policies may not been rolled out well. I'm really looking for merit. I want to see if you've got a
Yeah.
great idea. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to be able to source through the really crazy ones, but let's not reject the really crazy ones because we're so insecure we can't look at them.
Right. Right.
On the
Yeah.
merit front, it reminded me of something I was going to ask you. So you said 2% of the venture capital
Funds.
is you're going to have to funds go to women,
That's right.
women run businesses, but yet the women run businesses have a higher return.
That's correct. Yeah, that's
So do
correct.
you think that's because women have to hit a much higher bar
Oh,
so that their
definitely.
idea is probably
Definitely.
okay? So their idea,
Yeah. To be
they're-
taken
they
seriously.
come to the
And
market with a better
yeah.
idea that's more likely to succeed. So what I'm trying to parse here is whether it's the nature of women that actually run companies more successfully, or whether it's that the because of the high bar, they're coming into the market with a idea that's more likely to succeed.
High bar is one component, but the other parts of it, it's not. If you dig deep into this as I do, it's not all easy to puzzle through.
Yeah,
But you're a high performer if you actually you tend to be a high performer if you've made it to the top. And
yeah,
so there's a little bit of that merit crawling, but there's also systemic obstacles that we don't have to have. We have to understand in Canada that there's a broad spectrum of capital. So we often on innovation shows talk about venture capital, but there's private equity, there are pension funds, there is one of the best ways reverting back to business fundamentals and growing your business, having your customers be your success point, not venture capitalists that throws in money. So I'm really interested in
Right.
strengthening the entire capital ecosystem in Canada.
Huh. That's
Now,
okay.
you are a successful businesswoman. You're also into venture capital. So but before you got into venture capital, you yourself had some success.
Yeah.
Now, and so what was it about you or your scenario that, like, do you have any advice for other women coming up with a good idea? How would you help them or mentor them? Because I know mentorship is important for you.
Yeah. So I just had the great pleasure of being in San Francisco at World Agritech. And
Oh, nice.
yeah, fabulous. But it was pretty male dominated. I heard that the women's breakfast had been canceled and sponsorship withdrawn for whatever reason. And I decided this is not right. And so a week in, we sponsored the conference, Small Emerging Fund in Canada. We sponsored the women's breakfast and went down. And quite frankly, I had no idea what to expect. But it turned into, I think, the most exciting part of the conference. Standing room only,
Hmm.
maybe about 150 women who just wanted to have a frank conversation. We made it under Chatham House rules. And we looked at the challenges that women had. And then we also gave up some really good solutions. And we leaned into the room to provide solutions. And I've got them for you today. And we can knit them in
Hmm.
through this conversation. But essentially is
Yeah.
you got to be resilient and you have to build defensible moats, create differentiated products. You got to work on your business fundamentals, like definitely be unconquerable. And how males say this is Paul Graham of Y Combinator. What he says to founders, a very male stand, he says, be a cockroach, don't die, and be
Hmm.
hard to kill. But really, for women, I'm kind of trying to turn that a bit differently. Just don't run out of money is great advice. But how do you optimize revenue? How do you get your customers? Keep a laser focus on your core market and customers. Operate lean. There's a whole series of agile processes that can help a company move on. Be data driven. Leverage AI. What AI can do is simply blowing my mind. So,
Hmm.
what I would like to do, and it's not just for women, it's for all founders, I'd like to see them really drive back to the fundamentals and focus on unit economics because on farm, there's nothing more important than unit economics on farm. The margins are slim. If you're developing technology that they can't afford, then you don't have a business.
This,
You
this is so.
okay, there's so many things,
Yeah.
but let's let's go with the last one that I noted down, which was unit economics. Um, what exactly do you mean by that?
So, if I drove by a ranch, because most of my thoughts are deeply in ranching and livestock. If I drive by a ranch, I can pretty much tell you how much money you have in the bank. If I can survey how much land you have, how many cows you have, those unit economics are pretty well known from standard basis. If I know how well you do certain things, I might be able to help you improve those margins. But that's how simple it is. You better know what the standard operating margins are in an industry. Then you have to see what kind of land and or asset base you operate from. And then technology has to make whatever a farmer is doing or a rancher is doing, it has to be better. Simple stuff.
Right. I think that's what one of the points that you said was deeply know your customer, and you're more likely to succeed if the problem is worth solving. So
Exactly.
if you're doing something that the industry needs, or like you said, tech that makes the farm profitability better.
That's right.
Yeah, and you also talked about leveraging AI, which is something we definitely want to talk about. But this whole thing about business fundamentals, operating lean, all the stuff that we've just been talking about is like uniquely, I mean, interesting to me. We run a business. I mean, this podcast is a business, and Burr Forest Group, the company that produces it, is my business. So I'm very interested in this. So and you've also talked about mentorship. So my question, either on air or off air, is. Will you be my mentor? Just we'll ease into this relationship.
Okay.
This all sounds
Yeah.
really great. But
Did you want Alison to answer
no,
that?
I don't, because I don't want to hear a no. So I'm just gonna skirt. I'm just gonna keep on going. But the AI component of it, and we hear a lot about AI in ag, and kind of every conference now has to have some talk on it. Love to hear your perspective and your thoughts on its use
Uh,
in.
Okay, so if
Yeah,
you don't mind, I'll tell a little of my background and then lead into AI. So,
perfect.
um, when I was 25, I met a mentor, and boy, that was the luckiest thing that I ever had. A gentleman who was the chairman of the Port of Halifax, and or at that time called Halterm, the container port, and he was entrusted by the Alberta government to do something really incredible. I'll call it break the crow rate, but essentially it was to reduce
Mm.
the cost of containerized traffic moving from Alberta. And this gentleman thought differently. And what he did for me is he showed me, first off, he had gone through GM's diesel locomotive division. GM in the day had an incredible employee management and advancement system. And so he thought differently than men that were bringing young management, young female management onto their staff. He felt that he gave me one piece of advice that has always stuck in my head. There are no bad employees, only bad managers. And whenever I would complain about an employee or something, I got that. And
Mm.
that shifted, and there was many things I learned from him. But essentially, I through that process, I was able to develop one of the first electronic data interchange projects with a Canadian railroad. And in 2 years, I was able to convert that into a little bit of capital. I thought I was invincible. And so I started investing in small startups that were in agriculture, and we had to focus on the supply chain. I met an engineer in Alberta, and he and two other engineers have been looking at data very differently. And this is just about the time that internet was coming about. My skills were mainly financial, and I shifted very deeply into tech. And over the next 20 some years, we developed a data acquisition and analytics program, process, platform that identified animals that were efficient, could identify disease before symptom expression. We took that technology around the world. We scaled it into most major agricultural universities, on farm, on ranch. And in 2019, we divested our company to a UK private wealth firm. And part of the reason I never had time to think that I couldn't get capital. We grew our business from cash flow from operations. And the reason we had some very early on angel investors that were phenomenal. We gave them a very good return. And when I divested my company, I started looking at what are the things that I wish I could have done better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Owning 90% of your company and divesting is pretty good. But
Yeah.
what we really did learn through all of this was the challenges on data. And when you're chasing a company, when you're chasing revenue, when you're chasing customers, you don't have time to think about the fact that maybe you're not getting venture capital because you're a woman. You don't think about it. You just think, and I'm not sure if you bleep vernacular, but I just thought, well, if those bastards won't fund me, I'll go find a way
Hmm.
to, I'll go find a way to fill in through customers. Really strong way to build your business, but it takes a long time. And one thing about venture capital, it can help you accelerate and scale fast.
Yeah.
So,
Y-
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No, it's in our notes here that you and Ashley had talked about that, and that's really interesting. How do you think your business growth would have changed if you had venture capital, if you went that
I don't
route?
know, maybe at the time I don't know that it might not have changed, but the advent of
Okay.
AI. So we were doing very early stage machine learning, um, regressions, functions, things. We were doing some very cool things, running multiple computers to do computation, but we didn't have the tools. And one of the things that I saw was really important for me was I had to go back and learn deeply about AI. And much of the AI research was done in Canada. And what I did for a year was I just immersed myself in newer technologies like blockchain, newer technologies like AI. I really had to fundamentally understand what it was. I don't think I fully grasped that, but the speed at which AI has evolved is something that if you don't understand it, you better find out about it and at least know how to use it. But it is absolutely transformational.
Have you seen good ideas on how a farm, whether a livestock operation or a grain operation, can use AI?
Oh, absolutely.
What would be
Yeah.
one thing that you would suggest a farmer do in the next year or
Well,
two
first off, if
using
you
AI?
haven't played around with ChatGPT, get into it. If you haven't used Perplexity AI, a very deep research tool, do use it. And Perplexity AI, all of these tools are very inexpensive. And so if you have any problem on your farm, be querying. And
Mm.
Perplexity is a bit more research deep. And you can even upload your spreadsheets. You can upload your financial
Hmm.
statements. There's AI plugins. And so you can become a superstar. Your unit economics are drifting, plug it
Right.
in.
I'm so glad you came back to that. So one of the things that your company or your invention helped with was identifying animals that were inefficient or efficient. So you could select specific cows based on their efficiency or
Correct.
their likelihood of producing a nice profit. Do you think on the grain side of things, I don't know whether the unit would be acres or whether the unit would be tons of production. But I'm thinking even in acres, if you consider an acre as your cow, um,
For me, it,
do you think we need?
for me, it would never be acres
Okay, what
because
would
it's
it
not
be?
a finite enough measurement. It's going to be tons of production, perhaps,
Okay,
and it may
yeah,
also have quality overlay on it. So it's not just always
mm,
quantity, it's sometimes quality, but we're not often
Sure.
paid for quality. And so those are the kind of things that we should also shift.
so that's interesting. You say acres as not finite, and I think of the land as the most finite, the most
Ah,
defined. So interesting. So it's my mindset. I'm stuck in this
yes, you
old mindset.
are.
You're yes. Okay. So
Okay, so what's the most important?
tell me why you.
What it's a
Yeah,
chicken and egg question. So tell me,
yeah.
is it the soil? Is it the microbes in the soil that we really want to measure?
I think that's the way our conversation is going,
Yeah,
though. We're
hope
soil
so.
health is such a big part of our. You hope so.
I hope so, but it's not the only thing to focus on. It's water
Yeah.
quality, water access, it's air. I mean, just think of all the things that affect a farm.
Okay. So it's not
Hmm.
just it's not the acre, but
No,
it's the things that drive that productivity within that
you
acre.
always have to, yeah,
Sure.
you always have
Yeah,
to
all the
roll
characteristics of
everything.
that acre. Yeah.
You have to roll
Yeah.
it
Okay.
up to
Yeah.
the economic payback, right?
Yeah.
So,
Mm.
Yeah.
so it's probably not acres. It could be bushels. I mean, what is it? But
Yeah.
definitely
Right.
you have to make sense of it. And then let's take this back to fundamentals. I can nerd out and talk about microbes and soil, but what is a farmer paid for? And
Yeah.
that in
Right.
itself is another financial restriction. Are we rewarding the wrong things and the wrong people? And I would say
Mm.
across probably every industry we are.
Okay. Well, that's a big bold statement. Are you talking more? So we're paying for bushels of wheat when in fact we should be paying for tons of protein or tons of gluten or like I don't
Okay,
know. So what do you
so
mean?
who gets
I
the
don't.
most
Yeah.
money in the supply chain? Is that where it should sit? I'd say unlikely. So is it the farmer who actually creates the entire product? Is it the person that owns the land? Because the person that owns the land and the farmer could be different. This is a very
Hmm.
Mhm.
philosophical conversation. This is when most people leave you at a party, just so you know.
Right.
So we're gonna stick with you because we know that you're that three
No,
degrees
I'm
of
not.
separation.
But
Okay, but we're sticking with you anyway, Allison.
Okay.
So keep rolling.
It's just really, I think that our supply chain, there's people that are makers and takers across the supply chain, and that actually shifts with supply and demand. And so it's an economic quandary on how can we compensate farmers better? How can we compensate those that grow nutrient dense foods? How can we
Mhm.
compensate people who create blue pigment out of nothing?
We don't.
yeah, and
It's those the pain. Obviously, I really like the nutrient dense foods comment because that's not usually part of the quality equation. But maybe that's one of these shifts that we need to think about. Nutrient density per ton.
well, I'm also
I
curious about
almost said per acre.
how these shifts even happen
Yeah.
in the value chain. How do we start valuing,
Ah,
these?
We need to find those people who
Yeah.
have those good ideas. Okay,
no,
you
you
said,
don't.
Allison,
You
the floor is
need
yours.
you need as a consumer to ask for it, demand it,
Mm,
and pay for it.
pay for
So
it.
that's where the shift takes place, and at the consumer level.
I hate to say it, but
But
it
Yeah.
comes back to
yes,
capital and it comes back to pricing mechanisms. And so it's not an
Mm,
easy conversation, but this might come back to where women play because women
hmm,
purchase about 81% of our food and our products. They're usually the decision maker in a household. Maybe we as women need to be asking for better food and paying for it.
yeah.
hmm,
If we twist that around to the
hmm.
farmers' side of
Yeah.
things, because so if farmers want to be more proactive in getting a better, I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation since farming began. Probably, how do farmers get compensated more for the what they bring to the table? Um, how do they be proactive? Like, are there ways that they can, rather than just being passively accepting the current scenario, how do farmers be more proactive in getting more,
Getting more.
Um, uh,
a bigger percentage
Oh yeah,
of the,
yeah.
well, first off, they got to control the narrative. And so they have to talk
mm,
more. And farming is a pretty lonely activity. And so by joining forces with associations, telling the story more clearly, um, that's part of how that message can be sent out there. let's have a little reality check on that, though. That sounds really good, and
Mm-hmm.
all the associations across Canada will be saying, "Great, see, this is a reason for us for being." But if you take a look at
Right.
every province and across the country, everyone has their own associations for many different reasons and thoughts. We need a strong Canadian Agricultural Association that drives not just for one limited lobby group, but uh, it lobbies for agriculture across the country. I think as we've been talking about trade barriers and other things, maybe we're starting to see that this provincialism that we've created might not be as smart as good nationalistic. And I don't want that to be nationalistic. I'd rather have this as a global thought process.
Mm-hmm.
I
Hmm.
think
Yeah.
deglobalization is one of our greatest risks.
Right.
Yeah. I, I I don't want to let AI go. There was yeah, yeah. So when we, like I said earlier, building this context of hearing about AI often at these conferences and stuff, and it's becoming a lot like, yeah, try ChatGPT, and I use ChatGPT a lot. And you'd mentioned Perplexity, which I definitely want to check out after this. I'm curious about, if I say on a really granular level, and I've been curious about this, plugging in some spreadsheets and kind of anecdotal kind of business information for my business into ChatGPT for business modeling and that kind of stuff. How confident can I be as in what it spits out and what it gives me?
So eh, you have to know whether or not your data is being used to create models. And if you have an enterprise version of either ChatGPT or Perplexity AI, your data is not stored or used for model development.
Hmm.
Make an assumption that anything you submit, be smart enough when you're on the public forum to never
Yeah.
to never submit things that you would not want taken around. Assume that your data is used to build a model, and
Right.
then also be pragmatic. How valuable is your data? Because
Yeah.
once you've been in data, you start realizing that, sure, there are certain parts of your data you want to remain private, but there's a lot of what you do, other way smarter people could be doing it better. So
Hmm.
I don't get too concerned about it. I never put my customers' private data into a source unless I have
Right.
their permission. But data's out there, and it's there to be used. But be cautious.
Mm.
And how confident can I be in the results that
Not at
something like a
all.
Chat GPT
Not at all.
gives me? Yeah.
Don't be
No?
confident. Research, but what it does is it gives you a starting point. It gives you ways. Your knowledge is what's translated through AI. What you think you know is either evidenced by someone else, but even the one reason that I like either, if you get a result in ChatGPT, ask for the source. If you haven't got a
Right.
source there, where did they come up with a source? Then go check out that source, and is it something you want to use that data? And also sources sources from peer-reviewed research, I like a little
Hmm.
better sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, not always. And it's just really be smart when you use the tools, but the tools make you so much better than what you are.
And
So
just on that note, because I this unit economics, which is the theme of, well, one of the themes, but do you think AI and these tools can help an individual farm analyze their unit economics
Yes.
and identify ways to improve?
Yes, and there's tools that reside within uh, ChatGPT, and there's agents that you can use to query. Some of these agents have
Mm.
been built to explore your unit economics. But even if you don't have access to those tools, don't want to pay for them, um, just try to find out what tools exist to do whatever job you want to do. So you can ask that in
Farms will hire,
consultants.
yeah, Allison,
Yeah.
consultants. Okay, exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I can I finish one thought?
okay.
Just on that, because we have a lot of agronomists who help with agronomy.
sure.
We don't have a lot of good tech advisors that a farm could phone and say, how do I use AI to help with my unit economics? So you mentioned consultants. Is this a growing field or an empty field that really is in desperate need of some people?
Okay, so agronomists, if I'm correct, there's about 2,800 of them across North America. There's probably lots of small ones and things I haven't included in that number. They can't cover every acre, but
Yeah.
things like image processing can, or images and then how they're processed
Mm-hmm.
can. Satellites can. So there's a number of technologies that can contribute. Farms like agronomists, and I'm sure there's good ones and bad ones, just like there's good doctors and bad doctors. So I have no
Mm-hmm.
comment there. But if they're not keeping up on the
Mm.
tools and technologies, then they will be outstripped pretty quickly. And that's what we're going to see in many industries. So I'm not specifically hitting agronomists. I'm just saying that if the knowledge you're not bringing to your farm is valuable and actionable, then tools and technologies may outstrip you.
So it is my turn,
Yeah,
Jay.
that's all you. Sorry. Thanks
I'm
for
just
thanks for
kidding.
letting me go down that path. Yeah.
You can interrupt anytime. So I think I only think this because it's in my mind, and I'm assuming it's in others too. There's a sense of when I use ChatGPT for things, and I use it a lot, and I should use it more. I still use it, I'm sure, on a daily basis, but um, there's an element that I think I'm cheating. Like I feel like
Okay.
I'm getting a technology to do something that I should really be doing myself. And I'm ambivalent about it because I realize that I am doing it myself because it gives me, if I give it quality, it gives me quality. So so there is a bit of that. So I want your comment on that, but then I also want to tie it into something a little bit lighter, and I want to talk a little bit about food and how I use AI in menu development.
So those are two really good questions. So don't lose the first one with the second one.
Okay.
So let's make sure Allison
Yeah.
answers your
Yeah.
first
Oh yeah.
question.
Yeah. For sure.
Okay.
For sure.
So you have a little bit of tech imposter syndrome. And
Mm-hmm.
from my
Yeah.
perspective, I would just call you a dumbass if you're not using all the tools you can in your
Yeah.
box. Okay. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely, it's your initial thought that asks the question to ChatGPT
Right.
or any AI provider. You're asking the question because you've got a fundamental desire to know the answer. The answer is going to take your question and make it better. If you don't, if you stop there and say, I'm fantastic, don't. Make sure that the answer you got back is right. It is what you want to inform. And forget about feeling like an imposter because basically your initial question or query created the output. Does that make you feel better?
It does. It does.
Okay.
I mean, but I think I'm asking the question because I believe others think this too, because they think, okay, well, it I can't take this technology seriously. It is like cheating on an exam or something like that. So I wonder. I'm trying to get in the heads of more than just me.
Well,
Yeah.
my son, who's 19, he used ChatGPT to write a letter to a prospective employer. And he said, I can't take full credit for it. I used ChatGPT. And I said to him, absolutely, you should have done exactly that. Don't apologize for that. That's what's going to kind of, that's the tools there. You should be using it. Absolutely. And I wanted to make sure that he wasn't feeling like he
Mm-hmm.
was cheating
Yeah.
because you're like,
Yeah.
what did you say? A
Yeah.
dumbass
Sorry.
if you're not using them. Yeah, no, I like it. That's
Yeah.
good.
No. Yeah, don't. Yeah.
So I think you
Don't
have to go
apologize.
into it, and there's a lot of money being spent on. We have to see whether or not this is Chat GPT responding. Well, it makes it as an employer,
Hmm.
if one of my employees did not use ChatGPT, did not scrape databases ethically, did not provide me all the data, I would not be happy. That would not be an employee
Mm.
I would hire. Now,
Hmm.
if your son doesn't know who the employer is, though, Jay, I would say to him, make sure that everything he has put in his application letter is truthful. He really believes in
Oh
it.
yeah,
And then he doesn't have to declare much further than that, because does
no, and
did
yeah,
you ever say, I
absolutely.
got this from Encyclopedia Britannica? No. I mean, you might cite it in a publication, but your knowledge comes from books. Your knowledge comes from others. Why can your
Hmm.
knowledge
Yeah,
not come from something like ChatGPT?
yeah.
What are the most what are the use case scenario that gets the most traction with me when I talk about it with others? Like I said, I use it quite a bit, but is how the odd time, my wife and I are like, what do we eat, for dinner? She's a school teacher, so she's at work all day, and I like cooking, so we're like, I look in the fridge, open the fridge, and here's the ingredients we have in the fridge. So I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, we have this, we have this, we have this, create a few possible menus or recipes for me. So yeah, I have never been disappointed. It's actually created
Yeah,
some
there you
really
go.
great stuff, and people really like that. I mean, it isn't so advanced, and I feel like we should be using it for more advanced things, like we've talked about in this conversation. But that's a real great entry point, I think, for some people to get really
Absolutely.
excited about that use. Yeah,
Absolutely. It
yeah.
it brings up a whole sphere of other issues.
Hmm.
But it is it's an advancement.
Yeah.
Allison, in the notes that Ashley provided for us, our colleague Ashley, it has you saying that agriculture is often siloed.
Yeah.
I don't know whether, but shouldn't be.
No.
How do we get out of that silo? How do we draw in ideas from the world to make agriculture better?
So let's go back to the narrative about agriculture and how I talked about having multiple associations. Um, Everyone eats. It's an antiquated industry because it's been around forever. And so we've tended to kind of ignore it. It's also a consumer. It's a consumer of 30% of the world's energy. It is a fundamental industry. And so I think we have to get, and today is just the right time to have this discussion. We have to
Mhm.
be way more global. We have to know who we're interacting and trading with. The Netherlands is such a good example of a place. It's really the size of Nova Scotia. Well, you can sit it inside Nova Scotia, and Nova Scotia is our second smallest province. So
Hmm.
the Netherlands outstrips us in an export basis. We say that we're at an export basis of about 150 billion right now. And actually, I think we're more like 99 on exports that compare to Holland. And Holland is 150 billion euros annually.
Hmm.
And so they have 17 million people. We have 40 million people. For just a back of a napkin, I say from certain aspects, they're about 4 times more productive than we are. They
Wow.
do not have the land to produce. We are the world's fifth largest, though I do think we're drifting from that in production capacity. We could be bigger. So we need to know how to trade. We need to know our narrative. We are somewhat politically stable. We are sustainably focused. We should be trading everywhere. And so if someone wants to stand up and cut off our trade, give us 50% tariffs, we should have been positioned in a place that we could have responded better. So
Mhm.
that's how I think about it. We
Yeah.
have to be global. We have to control our narrative.
What? when we need to wrap up, Alison, and I do want to ask a question, one more question, but quickly.
Okay.
This is not a quick question though. But why is Canada just struggling? Is there something that immediately comes to mind when you think of Canada and our drifting downward in terms of productivity?
We've been very comfortable for a very long time. We need to be competitive. I think that our productivity comes out of our comfort. There's a lot of other reasons we have not adopted the technology we could. We have not deployed technology widely. We need to start adopting those technologies that we created.
There's a whole nother podcast there.
Yeah.
Like I want to talk about the regulatory environment and some of these other things that might kind of stall that progress or get your opinion on, but I won't. So I'll ask the question like I promised I was going to ask sailing, how to do it.
Okay.
No.
I'm from Saskatchewan, and I grew up wanting the ocean. And so what I did is I
Yes.
went and I took the American Sailing Association courses, and I'm certified to sail a boat under 60 meters. I'm not a great sailor, but I love it. So that's how you start.
Oh, that's so awesome. So when you took the coursework, was it did you go somewhere to take the course?
Yes.
Did
It
you
was my
like
first holiday after 15 years, and I went to British
yeah.
Virgin Islands to learn how to sail.
Ooh, I've looked at these courses before, so I know what she's
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So no regrets for
Oh,
taking the
no
course.
regrets. Bought an old boat and left it
Okay.
in the Sea of Cortez in Mexico.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
This is a dream.
Okay.
So my wife and I, there's this narrative in my house that there's going to be a water portion to our lives. Like this is the
There you go.
land portion now, where I am a farmer, so this is the land
Yeah.
portion. There will be a water portion.
Okay, when are you going to do the water?
No, it's always kind of looming. We're not quite
Hey,
sure.
Toban.
I want to say it's fluid.
So Tobin, I think
Anyway, go ahead.
I think that's a vision of a lot of farmers, because many of the people that I've met sailing are Saskatchewan farmers. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
funny.
there
That's
you go.
funny. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, Jay, you
Well,
were thank you.
I was just going to say, Alison, when you agreed to join these two goofs here for a podcast, was there something that you really wanted to say?
Yeah, there is. I just would like everyone to know what an opportunity agriculture is for Canada. I think it is perhaps our largest opportunity. And if you haven't thanked a farmer today, kiss a farmer and say thank you, because that's where your food comes from.
Nice try, Jay. Yeah.
I was going to kiss you.
Yeah. Well, I thought, well, yeah.
There was
Come on, Jay, get in there.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Yeah.
do it. Yeah. Well, that's a great closing message, Alison. And like
Yeah, for
Toban
sure.
said, there's so many more things we would like to talk to you
I
about.
got like mentorship.
So
Maybe
in
go
a
back to
year
mentorship,
we'll
yeah.
do part 2, but
Okay,
maybe not
sounds
even a
good.
year.
thank you so much, Alison.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a fantastic conversation.
It
Thank
was
you
a
so much.
delicious conversation.
That was like I didn't get to like 50% of my
know.
list. Now I'm all in numbers and data now. 50% of my list I didn't get to.
I know.
The unit economics of that are terrible.
Yeah. Well, my brain is so full I can barely talk, but that was such a rewarding conversation. I mean, I guess in a lot of cases I could talk with people for a long time. I'm just thinking about this.
course,
These
yeah,
people
yeah.
in the corner of
Yeah.
the room who we don't engage with. I think that's my takeaway.
It's a poignant
ideas
tableau,
people,
isn't it?
Yeah. These
Yeah.
ideas people who don't, maybe because they're, well, I mean, the wrong gender, the wrong, like all these things where
Yeah.
there's some reason why they're just not charismatic enough. But that's where the ideas live. We need to get out into those,
I know.
those parts of our society and do what we can to draw out all those great ideas.
Like find the weird people in the room. You know,
Weird people, yeah.
I like that. I like that kind of like yeah. I like that as like a challenge. You know,
Yeah.
and to yeah. I agree. That was a poignant part of it, and I think.
Well, I think for all like agriculture organizations, I mean, people who rock the boat aren't always the most popular people on a board.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe how do we relish those people or give them a voice?
Yeah.
Because they're probably in the backs of their minds, maybe they don't approach it in the best way possible, but that we need to be talking to all of those people.
Yeah, like and without homogenizing them, right? Like, so you don't want to like, you know, hey buddy, you know, your ideas would get so much more traction if you just be more normal, right? Like you don't want that either, right? So you need to find a mechanism through which like you keep them being, you know, unapologetically themselves while being able to kind of learn and you know.
Well, even like at the universities or like the students who are, you know, aloof, maybe not, you know, buying the status quo. I mean, they're going to get an F and they're going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe those are the people who we really need in this industry.
Or like find a way to at least hear them, right? Like that's the, you know, you may as well take advantage, eh?
So inspiring for me. I kind of like having those conversations. So I'm kind of
but okay, I agree with you. So my comment was addressing that. So like I like having those conversations, but there are lines for me where it gets a bit too weird, right? So like I like
or a little less fun.
So I'm interested in my own thresholds on what my own boundaries that I've drawn in terms of what I think is fun conversation. I think is a broader probably than a lot of people, but there are still lines where it's like, okay, this is just I don't see this. Like I don't
right.
This,
okay.
So that's what I'm interested in.
And
right?
do you think that's useful for you to push back, or like would that person benefit from that conversation?
Like I think
it might be,
I think
because if you're the first person they've pitched this idea to, and you could say, you know what, I'm really not seeing it this way, but have you thought about this? And it might just be that little tiny nudge that this idea needed to flourish.
Yeah. I would like to think that, you know, I would like to work on myself to be able to better engage with like those people that I've maybe in the past kind of written off, or like find ways to do it where I still feel it's interesting, right? Because like why do we as people feel so can feel so challenged by those wilder ideas? And I think like what is that, right? That nugget is important, right? Because I think at the root of it, at a broad level, like how much better could industries be if they would find ways to
embrace
more.
That diversity.
Engage more,
not shy away from it.
And it is like I think we don't do it for really kind of ridiculous reasons, like insecurity, and I mean that's not ridiculous, but for these reasons that exist outside of the industry itself. They're broader commentaries on.
We got to wrap, but that was
even this wrap up is like I still could talk about talk about so much. Sailing and food and whatever, mentorship. Hopefully she's our mentor, my mentor.
Yeah, you gotta send her a little note and say.
I saw her, like she was making notes.
It was a big X.
Burr Forest Group X. Out.
I think it's worth asking that again though.
No,
because wouldn't that be a great mentor?
I agree. We
are the Extensionists. I'm Jay.
And I'm Toban.
And we are having conversations with great thinkers in agriculture like Alison Sunstrum. Thanks for listening. Till next time.
Are you curious about what Jay and I get up to behind the scenes at the Extensionists?
The Extensionist has a newsletter. We'd love you to subscribe. We give you exclusive content, some behind the scenes,
and important updates. You're never going to miss an episode again.
Please sign up at theextensionist.com. This has been a Burr Forest Group production. We also want to thank the people you don't see.
We're here, we're chatting away with our guests, but there's tons of people who work behind the scenes to make this podcast happen.
Ryan Sanchi is our director.
Ashley Robinson is the coordinator.
And Abby Wall is our producer and editor.